All right, guys, today I'm gonna show you how to hinge and how to properly grow an ass. So, first thing that you're gonna wanna do is you wanna know how the hamstring stretch feels, all right? And in order to stretch out the hamstrings, we're gonna have to learn how to do a good morning, okay? So a good morning essentially is a straight leg hinge, but we're just trying to stretch out the hamstrings as much as we can, all right? So from the side, it's going to look like this. And stand nice and tall. You can put your hands onto your hips and think about pushing your hips back and sticking your butt back while keeping your legs as straight as possible. And then we're gonna come back through, okay? Push the hips forward again. We're gonna do this again, all right? You can put your hands onto your hips, push it back, keep the legs straight, feel the stretch, and come back. Notice when I'm doing this exercise, my lower back, I'm not bending over at the bottom, okay? So, I know a lot of you guys, when you guys first start this exercise, you're going to bend your back because you're going to try to reach as far down as possible, okay? But I'm here to tell you to just simply push your butt back as far as you can without actually bending your lower back, all right? So this is an example of what it looks like when you bend your lower back. So you hinge, right? You see your back is still straight, and then you bend the lower back. So what that's going to do is we're not stretching out the hamstrings anymore. It becomes a back extension. And we don't ever want that to happen, especially when we're trying to grow our ass. So, after when we learn how the good morning works, okay, we're then going to proceed to find a box. We're going to line up our feet right in front of the box, all right, almost touching. And now we're going to do the hinge, but with our knees, we're gonna slightly bend it now, okay? So I want you to think about we're falling back into the box, keep the knees slightly bent, but still driving those hips back, pushing that butt out. So once again, just like the good morning that we did earlier, I don't want you to use your low back. I don't want you to think about going as far deep as possible. I just want you to keep your hips high, stick the butt out, and feel the stretch in the hamstrings. So once again, see, hinge. I'm keeping my hips high, and I feel the stretch all the way down in my hamstrings. Then I'm gonna contract and push my hips through. So, a common mistake that I encounter is that once you actually do hinge back, you tend to drop the hips, okay? So I'm gonna demonstrate. So we're thinking about driving our hips back, but instead of keeping our hips high and driving it back, as we drive it back, we're coming down instead, okay? So we want to avoid this at all costs. So when you're doing the hinge, think about keeping the hips high, but trying to stick it as far back as possible. What you need to do is just grab a pair of dumbbells, okay? Now these don't have to be heavy, but now we're just going to try to stimulate this exercise with weight. So once again, we're gonna get into the position, right? But this time, I want you to think about your legs as railway tracks, okay? And these, they're trains. So we're gonna put it in front of our legs, and now in this position, we're gonna guide the dumbbells down the leg and up. But still, same thing. Focus on keeping those hips high and pushing your ass as far back as possible without dropping it down. So, you notice how when I'm first starting this exercise, I start by pushing my hips back. I'm driving my hips back to initiate the movement. I know a lot of you guys, when you guys are gonna first start this exercise, it's called the Romanian deadlift. What you're probably going to do is you're going to let the weight drop you down first. This is what it looks like when you let the weight move you down first. Did you see that? Do it one more time. This is what it looks like when we let our hips hinge back first. Another common mistake that I notice a lot of people doing is you start to bend your lower back, especially when you're nearing that bottom position, okay? So I want you to take a close look at my back, especially my low back, and see how it bends at the bottom. So once again, I'm gonna hinge, keeping my hips nice and high. But you see, over here, this is the most that I can go down without sacrificing my low back position. But I see a lot of you guys tend to go for depth rather than just a stretch. So keep in mind, this is a stretch and contract exercise. It's not an exercise to see who can go down the deepest. Once you practice it well with the box to understand how the stretch works, how the hinge works, we can completely remove the box from the equation. And now we can just do a regular Romanian deadlift with the dumbbell. So I'm gonna demonstrate now. Train tracks, train, hinge. I feel the stretch, and once I'm here, I don't need to go any lower, because if I go any lower, I'm going to start to sacrifice my lower back position. Then I'm just gonna contract and push my hips through. Once again, I'm gonna do this again. See, I'm hinging my hips back first. I'm feeling the stretch. And I'm contracting, and I'm standing up tall. Hopefully this video helped you guys to learn how to do the hip hinge, as well as how to do a Romanian deadlift. Let's work hard and let's start to grow that ass.